Hey YouTube, I'm Jerry Lowlife, and welcome to another episode of the entertainment industry. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Jerry Lowlife. On this episode, it was an interview with Jason Todd. He is a vocalist of a band called Spades and Blades that I met on tour when I was working with Fear Factory back in 2016. He's got many projects going on. It was really good catching up with him. And also big shout out to Jason for taking time out of his day to be on my show. I appreciate it very much. And also huge shout out to all you guys for all your support. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you guys want more information, wait till the end of the video. I'll have more things to come. Let's get to the video. It's great to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to be on my show, brother.
Of course, it's something I've been looking forward to. And when I saw that you started doing this series, I was excited. And I'm really happy that you invited me to be a guest, man.
Absolutely, man. Definitely. So we met in 2016 on the Fear Factory tour. It was absolutely awesome. It was a great pleasure having you guys on the tour. You guys did an absolute amazing job. Like, I was completely blown away when you guys first started. I was like, man, I'm so anxious always when I was working with bands and being on other tours, how we're all going to interact. Not only just interact, but how the show is going to be. There's a lot of factors that are kind of like exciting, you know, when you first get in those situations. So yeah, it was really awesome being able to meet you guys, and especially you, Jason. It was awesome, dude, knowing we kind of clicked it off the first bat because we're both from Oklahoma. So
yeah, that was one of many surprises on that tour, man. When I learned that you were from Oklahoma, I was like, oh man, that is like wild. What a small world, you know, what are the odds of, you know, two people from Oklahoma that love metal ending up on this, you know, same tour. And man, it was a blast. It was a lot of hard work and it was long, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were like some of your influences? Like, what made you want to become a musician, kind of starting from the beginning? Were there any specific things or music or, you know, just people in general?
Yeah. So I grew up in a household that was filled with music. My mom was always listening to like gospel music and country music, and some like contemporary, like soft rock kind of music. My dad was always listening to oldies and kind of classic rock stuff. And then I have a sister who's 10 years older than I am. And like, I'd be coming home from preschool and she's watching MTV. So that meant that I was watching MTV. So I, you know, was taking in all of that music, you know, the hard rock and heavy metal of the era, the late 80s.
Right.
But I distinctly remember the very first time, I don't know if it was the first time I heard this song or if it was just the first time that it really made an impression on me. But Queen's Another One Bites the Dust.
Okay.
Just something about that song, like, especially compared to a lot of their other material, that one, it has a certain darkness to it, a certain heaviness to it, but the groove is still there, and even lyrically it's a lot darker of a tone than their other songs, and of course you just can't deny the amazingness of Freddie Mercury's voice, but I just remember hearing that and thinking, who is this? What is this? I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I want to do that.
Also,
then,
I see some Elvis in the background as well.
yeah, another huge influence. Again, that really comes from my dad. We had a VHS tape of Elvis's Aloha from Hawaii that we watched. I mean, it's just countless times. And I just remember being mesmerized by just his persona.
Mm.
The appearance was just, over the top. And like he just had a charisma that made you fall in love with not only the songs but him.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Elvis has definitely been an influence for a very, I mean, since my, oldest memories. I mean, some of my oldest memories are my dad and I watching that video. And there's just so many great songs just in that one performance. And I revisit that record all the time. So yeah, Elvis is just obviously iconic. He's the king. Fucking love him.
Did you ever get a chance to go check out Graceland ever? Did you go check it out?
Yeah, with Spades and Blades, actually.
Nice.
I think it was the year before you and I met. I'm thinking it was when we were on the road with Straight Line Stitch. I'm not positive which tour it was. It was either that one or when we were on the road with Insight. But I just remember waking up in the van and we were at some gas station. So I got out to, go use the restroom and just kind of start my waking up process and figure out what was going on for the next day or two. And the guys were telling me, oh, we have, I think it was that night we had a show. Then the next day we had the day off and we were going to be driving through Memphis. So I told them, dude, we have a day off and we're going through Memphis. We have to go to Graceland. And they were like, no, we don't really have the money for it. And I was like, I will pay for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not taking no for an answer on this. So
did you guys do like the headsets and everything? Did you like do that kind of thing? Like the virtual, I guess, tour, I guess you would say?
Yeah. So the way they had it set up when we were there was everyone got an iPad and you had headphones that connected to the iPad and the iPad had GPS. So it knew where you were at in the house. So that's how it cued what it needed to tell you about the area that you were in. And one of the fun things that they did with that was they actually had John Stamos narrate it. And I thought that was really cool because, he had that whole Elvis persona on Full House. And I remember growing up with that too.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was like unique and it just made the experience a little more fun.
I had this kind of a similar experience and it was with, actually went there with Cobra and the Lotus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was there with Cobra and all of them and cause I've never been there before and they just wanted to go, a bunch of Canadians that are like, man, let's do this. And there's one particular place in that entire, like the whole thing was awesome, but there was one particular place that just made me go, wow. Like, that Elvis was big, Elvis was the king, but what really put it in perspective is when you turn that hallway and you see all the platinum records and everything that leads into the trophy room. And it was just like mind blowing. Like when you see that with your own eyes, you're just like, wow.
Yeah. Wall to wall, ceiling to floor.
It's amazing. Elvis Presley, man. I just watched have you checked the there was like the new movie that came out with him, like that was about him. It's pretty cool. I won't do any spoilers if anybody's that's watching. So it was really good. I dug it. I thought it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. I really wanted to see it the day it was released, but I have a 1-year-old, and like it makes doing almost anything very complicated.
Right.
Not that I'm complaining, because I love every minute of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so we had to wait a little while until we could figure out a good time and a date night to where we could go see it. But we did finally go see it here in Oklahoma City. There's that Flicks Brew House. Have you been there?
I don't think so.
It's pretty cool. It's one of those theaters where not only do they have the nice like reclining leather chairs, but there's also a table in front of you that expands and retracts, and they'll serve you food there. There's a full menu. So we went there and did dinner and a movie at the theater, and I thought the movie was like kind of, you know, like Elvis was, just bombastic. You know, it's a Baz Luhrmann film, and he has a very unique approach to doing films. You know, The Great Gatsby is one of his movies. And for anyone that has seen that movie, you know, it's not your typical, you know, run-of-the-mill approach when it comes to cinematography or editing. So I felt like the movie was a bit of an emotional roller coaster in a good way. But by the time it was over, I was kind of glad it was over, because, you know, I I felt pretty drained. Because it's an experience. It
is, and I can agree with you on all levels of that. It was really just a roller coaster of feelings for sure.
Yeah.
It was a cool approach. Like, it's definitely a different aspect of anything that's ever been done of them. So I thought it was really cool. The actors did great. You know, I thought that they portrayed it pretty well, you know, and did the things right, you know. So outside of music, do you have any kind of other interest or hobbies?
Well, I'm a carpenter by trade. So that's not necessarily a hobby. Although I do like to do woodwork, and, you know, I like to build certain things in my free time. I've made a few like farmhouse style tables.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that shit is a lot of fun. But also, I really like doing anything that is creative. So like right now, one thing that I'm working on is some prop building for Halloween. I'm working on a new witch's cauldron right now. And this is like the second one that I've done. And that stuff is just so much fun to me, because as much as I like walking into some place like Spirit Halloween, at the same time, like, I'm not impressed by a lot of what I see in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always thinking like, oh, like, could I do something like this but better?
Right.
So I like to do that. And I don't know, man, I just have a deep interest in all things that relate to music and horror.
Yeah.
And Halloween. Like, those things are, you know, pretty much what keep me going.
Yeah. I guess the woodworking would come like a lot handy to be thinking about it, doing the whole music thing, like building your props, building like certain things. Like, you know, I know you guys had the ego risers that you had. Did you build those?
No, actually, TJ did that. For people that aren't familiar, TJ was our drummer at the time. And he's very, very talented when it comes to working with tools and machinery. He does a lot of fabrication for motorcycles, but specifically Honda Shadows. He's got his own business that's doing really well. That's all they do is they make custom parts for Honda Shadows. But yeah, he's good with a blowtorch and working with metal, so he made that ego riser. Yeah, but I have made other props for the stage, and like we didn't use too much of them for Spades and Blades because the guys didn't really feel like it was kind of our style. You know, we're more of just like a straight ahead metalcore kind of band. But with this new project that I've been working on that you mentioned is called SÉANCE, and I have a lot of ideas for different props that I want to make for that. So I haven't started on them, but the ideas are there. So I imagine that probably over the course of the next several months, I'll start on them.
Currently, is there any main focus out of your projects? And again, your projects was Spades and Blades, the Havoc, and then you have SÉANCE as well. Is there like a main focus right now?
Yeah, the Havoc is putting the final touches on our new record. I'm really excited about it because that band is like, you know, it's my punk rock roots, kind of my journey through music. Once I reached adolescence, you know, I discovered punk rock and started getting into the punk scene. And my first bands were punk bands. And when I first moved to California, the first band I started was the Havoc, which Justin from Spades and Blades, he and I are like the founding members of that band. And we did that project from 2001 to 2006 before we decided to change things up. We changed the name, we changed the genre, and that's when we started Spades and Blades. And that started off more as like kind of a hard rock band, kind of like Motorhead meets Motley Crue. And it just got heavier and heavier and heavier as each year passed. But in 2019, I moved back to Oklahoma for a lot of different reasons. And once I got here, I was just reminded so much of my roots growing up and my musical roots. And I just kind of thought like it would be nice to do something with the Havoc. So I wrote a song that was actually about Justin, just our friendship. And I just knew that like trying to do it in like a metalcore sound was just not the appropriate vehicle for that. But doing it as a punk rock song just felt right. So I wrote this one song and I sent it to him and he loved it and was like, dude, we should release this. And I was like, that's opening up a big can of worms if we go down that road. Long story short, we decided to pursue it. And as I said, we're putting the finishing touches on our new record. It's our first album for the Havoc in 20 years. The last time we put out a full length for that band was in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been really focused on that since really the beginning of 2020 is when we started getting the ball rolling with it again. And then, of course, the pandemic and all that happened. So it kind of gave us time to take our time with it, which was good. So, yeah, that has been my focus. And then my new project, SÉANCE, I have several songs for that are in various stages of production. But we're getting really close to having the first single completed. I finally have the band formed. And this band is, it's a lot more in depth than anything else I've done in the past because it's theatrical. And so, you know, every aspect matters, from the costuming to the songs, the vibe of the songs, the tone of the songs. the lyrics, all of that. So it's a labor of love, and I'm not trying to rush anything with it. It's about getting it done right, not getting it done right now.
Okay.
But as I said, there is one song that we are intending to shoot a music video for in the very near future. That will be the first single. So yeah, I've been putting a lot of focus and attention on that.
Awesome.
As far as Spades and Blades is concerned, there's no movement with that right now. I would like it if we were doing something, but we put out an EP at the end of 2019 that I'm very, very proud of. It turned out amazing and pretty much kind of everything that I'd always been striving for that band. I felt like we finally reached it with that EP. But then I moved and the pandemic happened, and like the guys kind of lost interest. And they've started another project called Cake Eater that's more influenced by like old school hardcore.
Okay.
So they're working on that right now, and I'm stoked that they're doing that and having fun with it. As it stands right now, Justin and I are kind of the only ones that have the authority, you would say, to move forward with that project. But Cake Eater is his new project, so he's really focused on that. I'm really focused on SÉANCE. We're both focused on the Havoc, so there's not really room for Spades and Blades right now, which kind of kills me inside to say a little bit, but it just is what it is.
Right. It sounds like you got a lot going on too, just in general. I mean, and you're focusing on the things that matter. And I mean, God, the Havoc, 20 years. That's incredible. Like, it's been 20 years since you had something come out like that. And that's kind of cool to have that reignite that flame, and get that going. Like I can relate to that. Actually, I'm jamming with one of my old guitar players from like 20 years ago. So it's been fun. Very cool stuff. And when I saw SÉANCE, I should say, when the stuff that I've seen that you've shown me online and the things I've looked up, dude, I totally see you guys opening for like Ghost. That'd be so awesome. Yeah, it'd be great to see you guys like on the stage opening for Ghost. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be like pretty much the most obvious comparison I think that people will make, and a lot of that has to do with Ghost is just enormous right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, like that project kind of inspired me to finally move forward with this one, because I've had this swimming around in my brain for over a decade at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never pursued it because I was always wrapped up in, whatever other project I was focused on.
Right.
And when the pandemic started, I was trying to just improve a lot of things in my life. I had gotten sober, and I had been going to see a therapist. I had been in AA, and a lot of those things were just kind of putting me in this new headspace. And one of the things that I learned from my therapist was that creativity is kind of like my superpower, and it's a non-negotiable item in my life. It's something that I have to do. And since this, idea has been brewing in my mind for so long, I felt like, okay, maybe it's time to finally try and give birth to this. So it was crazy because there's just so much that I want to do with it that I almost didn't even know where to start.
Right.
But the thing that just felt the most logical to me was just to start with my guitar and to sit down and write songs that were 100% authentic. They're not trying to sound or be like something else. It's just what comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started, just recording demos of different song ideas and just developing them little by little by little. Um, and I didn't, even know how I was going to form a band with it or whatever, because, they're all my songs. I wasn't trying to do something that was really a collaborative effort. Um, so the first person that I really shared the songs with is Chris Collier, who's my producer. He produced the last Spades and Blades EP. Um, he's a fantastic human and an excellent producer. But when I shared the songs with him, he was like, "Dude, this is so cool because it's not like really anything that's happening right now." And like he's so used to just always doing stuff that's heavy. It's like every project is heavy, and this is, it's dark, but it's not necessarily heavy.
Right.
And so he was like, "Dude, this reminds me of like, shit that I grew up on that I still love." Like, like a lot of the influences are like late 80s and early 90s stuff, like Alice in Chains and Smashing Pumpkins and that kind of thing.
Right.
But he was like, "Yeah, man, like you need to keep going with this. Like I think that you're, onto something really unique and cool here." So he and I just started working through the demos and taking those songs to more of a final production place. And so we've got a few of them that we're developing right now. And I'm really loving how they're turning out. Yeah, from that, like I kind of had something to share with people to try and build a band. So I've been doing that for the last several months and finally got a lineup together about 2 months ago.
I think it's really, I guess, I don't know the better words to say, but COVID was like a better terms of sometimes a blessing in disguise. Like it put a lot of people and a lot of musicians I talked to in a headspace to kind of branch out and think about what they're doing, where they're moving forward. It made a lot of difference in a lot of ways, how people were writing, what they were writing about. Like it's absolutely amazing how that kind of changed some things. And now that things are starting to become open and people are getting out, and like obviously there's a lot more tours going on for sure right now than there were even a year ago. It seems that everyone I talk to there's either a project going on or there was some kind of like huge influence, like because people got to sit down and like get to know themselves, or they changed themselves in some way. And it just affected everything that they did as far as their writing process went. So it's very interesting and absolutely makes complete sense, So, and kudos for you, man, for, finding your way and doing the things that you need to do or get away from in that sense. There's a lot of friends of mine that do struggle with alcohol and those type of things. So big kudos to you, Jason. I'm pretty proud of you with that, man. It's not an easy thing to do. So big hat off to you.
Thanks, man.
Really absolutely. So is there like a specific like creative process when you're writing music? Is there like a certain thing that you do that's like the same all the time, or does it change often?
It's pretty much the same. It all starts with inspiration. I hear something and I just think, wow, I'd love to do something like that. And that usually puts me in this chair and I sit down with my guitar and I start messing with it until I get something that I like. And once I have that figured out, I just start building everything else around it. I have my own, studio set up here at home. So uh, learning how to use that recording software has been huge in my life. Because I can essentially create a band.
Right.
So yeah, it starts with the inspiration, and then the guitar, building everything around that, and then as I'm working on it, I usually will get like vocal melody ideas kind of just going through my head as I'm working on it, or like certain cadence for vocals, and slowly those start to develop into lyrics. Um,
Okay.
and once I have what I would call like, kind of the skeleton structure,
Hmm.
I will listen to it over and over and over and over and over to develop the rest of the lyrics. And once I have the lyrics kind of sorted out, then I'll attempt recording vocals for them. And generally, I will do that and listen back and be like, I hate this. Uh, I've got to figure out something else because this is awful. Um, so that begins like this whole other process of trying to um, redefine the melodies,
Uh,
rework the lyrics, until I feel like it's all working together.
okay.
And once I feel like it's all working together, uh, at that point, I'll usually go back and start trying to like iron out any little things I'm hearing that sound like a mistake or just need to be improved or, nudged a little bit or something like that.
Right.
Um, and then I will get the song into what I feel confident as a completed demo track. And once I have that, then I'll send it to Chris and see what his thoughts are, and then go from there as far as developing it into full production.
Okay.
But yeah, that
So when you write, do you write in a certain key to like your vocal potential? Like, do you ever change that key, or does it change, or do you stay like in a certain key most of the time?
tunings change based on the riffs. Um, like I like experimenting with different tunings,
Mhm.
because you can play a riff in drop C and it sounds one way, but then you can drop it even further and it sounds completely different.
100%.
So it's all just about, what feels right for the riff and what am I vibing on. Not so much about like, is this best for my voice?
Okay. That
Although,
was my question, because I know some people do that in order to feel comfortable. And, and I think it's more of a mesh of what is the feeling behind the song and a mesh of keeping on the same track with the vocal itself too. So I was absolutely just curious. So
yeah, the vocal like is honestly the last thing that's on my mind, which is kind of weird seeing as how I'm a vocalist.
right, right.
But you mentioned like artists writing something where they feel comfortable. For me, if I feel comfortable, then I'm not happy. Um, I am constantly trying to raise the bar and push myself out of my comfort zone because I want to be better at this.
Okay.
So musically, uh, I don't work. I don't, concern myself with vocals until I feel like the music is where I want it to be, where it meets my standards.
Okay.
Because even if I can't sing it perfect right away, that doesn't matter to me, because I know that I will face that challenge head on, and I'll work through it until I make it my own and it sounds right for my voice.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So that's a good aspect and perspective to go through in that manner. So it's always interesting to me to see the perspective of not only just the writing process, but the thought process too, you know, because everybody has such different approaches, and it's so cool to hear that, you know. And then speaking of that, one thing I like to ask people that I'm interviewing, you know, is what are strengths that you have that believe, I guess the best way I could say, what strengths you have that you believe make you, in that sense, a good musician. So if someone was interested in getting into what you do, you know, what are some strengths that you have that helps you out become a better musician in ways?
I think for me, a lot of it comes down to, I learned to play guitar by ear.
Okay.
And although I took lessons, I was taught to play by ear. So when I'm listening to music, a lot of times, like, I have a pretty good idea of, you know, what tuning it's in or what key the song is in, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am mistaken, it doesn't take long for me to figure it out when I sit down with it and my guitar.
Okay. So you kind of visualize those things, like it kind of comes to you really quickly.
Yeah. And it's weird because I feel like in a lot of ways it's been like that, like, even since before I learned to play guitar. I think it's just like, I don't know if it's just my connection to music, and like, you know, like a good DJ,
Yeah.
they'll be able to segue from song to song based on the key that it's in.
Right.
And like, there's a lot of software now that will tell you what key each song is in. So it basically just sets you up for success so that you can do those segues really well.
Mm.
But prior to that technology being available, if you were a good DJ, if you could recognize, like, oh, this song is in the same key as this other song, and the tempo is pretty close, so I
Right.
can probably do a good segue with that.
Right.
And so I just feel like I've noticed a lot of that in music, you know, from very early on, you know, like just noticing the similarities in different songs, you know, and, oh, that one sounds so much like this other one. Like, I wonder, you know, if they're in the same key or what. And
Right.
then once I learned to play guitar and I could sit down with those songs, and, you know, a lot of times I figure out, oh yeah, it is the same.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. So I faked my way in high school for like when I was in band. I was a band nerd.
Okay.
So I would literally, like, sight reading, I could not do it. I would sit down and look at it and like play it at a slow tempo and then work it up to tempo and then memorize it. So I'm not necessarily, I mean, I'm reading it, but I can't sight read it, like play right off the bat, you know? So I got caught up one day and we were doing some like new ensembles and I was playing like claves out of everything, like just some simple click, click, you know, things. And my director called me out in front of the entire orchestra and was like, you're not playing that part right. I was like, yeah, I'm not, you know, and I'm not doing that right. You know, it was like kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, like, it let him know my strengths, you know? So I visualize things, you know, like I would look at it and, you know, feel those things coming about. And I basically self-taught myself as well, you know, playing drums. Just in general, what is it about music that makes you feel so passionate about it? There's specific things that just bring out the passion big time.
I'm sure that there's a lot of answers that I could give,
Right.
but I think really what it comes down to is dopamine.
Okay.
You know, music releases dopamine. And as I, was discovering new music as a kid, I had no idea what was happening to me uh, biologically. Um, but what was happening was dopamine was being released.
Yeah.
And uh, I think because I grew up in this household where I was constantly surrounded by music at a very impressionable age, um, not only was hearing the music having a significant effect on me, but also MTV, watching all of those music videos, the visual aspect was also having a very big impact on me.
Okay.
And as I progressed through adolescence, I struggled a lot with just being in a dark headspace, being depressed a lot. I was one of those outcast kids that didn't really fit in. Um, and I think that's why I found a home in the punk scene. Um, and, uh, I kind of grew up in like this very religious household. And with that just comes a lot of repression. And as I became an adult, um, I just I got tired of feeling repressed all the time. And music was just the thing that always seemed to create some sort of release for me.
Okay.
Um, and especially performing music. Listening to music is one thing, but performing it is another. And when you're on stage and you're performing, especially if it's going well, it's a very exhilarating experience. Um, and you're essentially getting high. Um,
Which you'll hear the term of a lot of artists. There's no drug in the world like being on stage playing in front of people.
right. Um, so I think that was giving me that kind of release that I desperately needed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the only other things that I found that compared were alcohol, sex, and horrible food. Um, and when I say horrible food, I mean absolutely delicious food that is horrible for you.
Right.
Um, but once I started getting into therapy and getting sober, I finally learned some really important things about myself. One of those being that I am someone who's diagnosed with um, persistent depressive disorder, used to be called dysthymia. And essentially, what that means is that the cloud never leaves. The cloud is just always lingering. And for most people, chemically, their brain is like always kind of like right here.
Okay.
Mine is like here.
Okay.
So when people that are here use those things and they get high, they go way up here. For me, when I use those things, I come up here to what is like normal.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so my behavior started to become more and more reckless as I got further and further into alcoholism and being promiscuous and uh, binging junk food all the time, that kind of thing. Um, and then of course music. I mean, it was just always binging on music. Um, but once I started learning about healthy coping mechanisms, uh, I discovered that music is a healthy way for me to release dopamine. I'm not hurting anyone when I focus on music. I'm not hurting myself. Um, and I have found that since getting sober, I have developed so much further as a musician, and I've written far more material just in these last 4 years than I ever have before. Um, so yeah, man. Long story. Sorry, it's a long story,
No, it's
but
great.
long story short, yeah, I think it's just uh, music has that ability to release dopamine, and that's something that I absolutely need in my life.
Right, right. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm learning something like you were talking about how people have that consistent normal, and then you being kind of right below that. It makes complete sense that you found something that you can be in sense addicted to, a good addiction, that can bring you up that level and make you feel better in life in general. So who wouldn't be addicted to something that makes you feel that way? You know what I mean? So and just like you're saying, it's not hurting anybody, it's not hurting yourself. If anything, it's promoting good things in your life and positive aspects. So absolutely, that's definitely a, a good answer to what about music makes you feel passionate. So 100%, man. um so kind of moving on to the next question. This is a favorite one I like. So describe your favorite and least favorite part of being a musician. And like least favorite's pretty funny sometimes. Like I've gotten some cool answers on those.
Okay. My favorite part is just the discovery of what I am capable of.
Hmm.
Um, and, like, not to go too deep into talking about my new project again, but um, it's the first project that I have ever focused on just singing and not having screaming vocals. Um, and so I'm discovering now through this project uh, what I'm capable of as a vocalist in that regard, and surprising myself in a lot of ways. Um, so I love that. I love the discovery. Um, and I think the other thing that I love is just seeing the impact that it has on people. Um, Knowing that something that I created or that I helped create goes out there and it impacts people's lives, hopefully for the better. Um, and it inspires them. Um, I just think that it's incredible that we can create something that will literally never die. That's the strength of music, and I think it's mesmerizing to me. Um, the
Yeah.
thing that I enjoy the least, the disappointments. Um, you know, music is something that when you are an artist, you tend to put your all into it, and it's a very intense labor of love. Um, and when you put your all into it and then set it free, and it just seems like it's not making a significant impact. That disappointment hurts a lot. And being taken advantage of as an artist.
That's a brutal one.
You know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I am going to say it because I don't give a fuck. You know, there's a lot of people out there that claim to be industry professionals. And essentially, what they're doing is leeching onto artists and draining them financially. And I saw it so much in the metal scene that I'm kind of glad I put some distance between myself and that scene. Even though I still love it dearly, there are just too many snakes in the grass.
Very true.
These people that want to promise you that, you know, they can help your band and that they have the right connections and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, you pay them a lot of money and then nothing comes of it. I'm not going to name names. I will say that there is one person that I am not including in this that actually helped Spades and Blades a lot. He was our manager for some time. And although I wish that he could have done more for us, I don't equate him as to being this snake in the grass persona that I'm talking about. A lot of really great things and great relationships were formed because of that person. So I'm grateful to him and still talk with him regularly. But I feel so bad for bands that are hoping to become the next whoever. And they end up having some kind of relationship with these people that only want to bleed them dry. And, you know, for me, in my experience, having gone through that, it really tainted my love for music. It really tainted my love for being a musician. I'm not going to stop because this is who I am.
Right.
And I still love music, but
it's kind of like finding Santa Claus ain't real. You know what I mean? That's my analogy. So, and a little bit of backing, not to stop you, Jason, but like, there's a lot of things I want to add to that, what you're talking about. So I was in my band in Oklahoma City. We had, long story short, we had our opportunities. We had big opportunities, to be honest. And I was really just down about the fact that those opportunities passed me by without my control. And, you know, essentially Noah Robinson was a good friend of mine. We jammed together and he went and formed Bleed the Sky. And, you know, there's even stuff that was going on with him. I'm not going to mention names, things like that. But their management and stuff like that. So like the process with even from the smallest, tiniest, making $20 a week, being a roadie guy with Bleed the Sky in a van full of 9 dudes that maybe shower once a week. We can, you know, experiencing that and the costs and the things and the promises that they've had to even the bigger bands I worked for. You know, you see all the experiences and all the things and the hardships and just the people that promise them the world and all these things that happen. Like, it's brutal, dude. Like, it's so brutal. And like later on in life, I even kind of looked back and said, man, kind of glad I didn't go that route. Like, you know, I hate to say it that way. Like I really do, because I love music, absolutely. But you know, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, being a technician and a stage manager and seeing how hard it is to find good people. And there are a lot of great people in the industry, but there's just as many snakes in the grass as there are freaking good, you know, good people as well. So it's like, it's brutal, man. Like, so I feel that hard. You know, when you're talking about this, I'm just like, oh man, yeah, you know, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things that, you know, it's hard to pull yourself out of it. I mean, for me, it was, I felt pretty beat up, kind of at the end of 2019 after Spades and Blades put out our last EP. I really thought that was going to be a pivotal moment for the band. Because, you know, we had done some significant touring prior to that. And the last tour we did, the tour that you and I met on, having toured with Fear Factory and forming a relationship with Dino, who's always been a great friend, and he helped a lot with everything that we were doing with the band after that tour. And not because we asked him to, he volunteered to. And I was so grateful that he put himself in that position, because he had a lot going on with Fear Factory.
Right.
But you know, like, he's one of those persons that has always been inspiring to me, especially after meeting him and seeing, you know, all the things that he's gone through, and he keeps going.
It's inspirational,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, you know, I think it's about finding those good people and surrounding yourself with those people and being protective of what you have.
Yeah.
And you can't let your guard down and trust just anyone. That's just the unfortunate reality. But you know, like I was saying, I thought that after putting out that EP, that it was going to be a huge pivot point for the band. And we put it out, and it was just like crickets. And then the pandemic, and, you know, you throw the pandemic into the mix, and it's just like, well, that just takes the wind out of everyone's sails. So yeah, man, that was really hurtful. But I've just tried to move past it and focus on something new that I can breathe life into, and we'll see where that goes.
Right. At the end of the day, it's all we really can do, you know, is just kind of pick up where you left off and just kind of move on, you know. Can't let those things deter you. And
and you got to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know,
if you're to chase the dollar, then or to chase fame, I think that you're going to be met with even more disappointments.
Right. Yep. 100%. And it's like, anybody I talk to, people come to me all the time, you know, and they're just like, so how's it? What do you do? What do you see? All this, you know, what would you give me advice for someone that's just starting out? And I'm like, you know, at the end of the day, you got to love what you do. And if you don't love what you're doing, if you join and do these things, do anything, if you do any job in your life and you're not happy with it, then you need to find something that does make you happy. You know, it's that old saying that you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life, you know. And if that's what you feel like when you're writing music and you're in the music and you're doing that, then you're in the right place. But if you're in it for other reasons, you're going to come to, there's going to be a void that comes in place. It may not be a year from now. It may not be 2 years from now. It could be 5 years down the road. You get to a certain point that you're going to be faced with the realistic values of what brought you to being in this place, you know. And some people can cross that path because they have the right, you know, push. They have the right influence to do that. And whereas some people came in with other reasons, it's going to deter them from being able to cross that road. And it's hard to say, but that's realistic, and that's just life, you know? So I don't know. That's probably the best piece of advice I can give someone, is just be real about what you want in life, and you'll never be disappointed, because if you're passionate about it, nothing matters. You know, you're just going to push through things. You're going to go through walls to get what you want, and you're going to have fun doing it too. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jason. I hope I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're fine, man.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. I was like, crap, did I just mess something up?
I actually just wanted to add on a little bit to what you were saying about, you know, anyone that asks you for advice about being a musician or starting a project or whatever. And the thing that you said right towards the end was something about, like, you know, it has to, oh man, now I'm blanking on it, but what I was going to add to it is, like, having that sincerity behind it. You know, it's got to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times artists are fearful of showing vulnerability in their music. And that's the thing that you should actually be running towards. That vulnerability is what exposes your humanity to your listeners. And that is what is going to ultimately connect them to your songs.
And I agree with that for sure. You know, people will definitely, you know, and that makes me think people will see through fakeness. Yeah. You know, they will definitely see through fakeness a million miles away, you know, and if it doesn't happen right away, it will eventually, you know. It's crazy, but you know, if you do give it your all and you are real about it, people are going to feel that. They're going to vibe that right away, because it's going to become a natural instinct, you know, and that's something you can't hide. That's a good point. It's a very good point.
Yeah, you just said it right now. What I was missing is, you know, you're real about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, nothing will be able to hold you back from you being yourself. That's for sure. Do you have like a favorite venue that you like to perform at? Like, is there like a memorable venue that you like, or it doesn't even have to be like a most amazing one, you know? There's one, Jason, that I wished I could have visited and I never got to, and that was CBGB's. I never got to go to CBGB's, you know, but you know, and then I bring that up because it can be something from like something awesome and huge to something that's like a shithole, but it's like something you love, you know what I mean? Do you have one of those that you like?
There's a couple, but I want to touch on what you said about CBGB's first.
Okay.
The Havoc was actually supposed to play there. I think it was 2002.
Oh, wow.
We were touring in a 1977 Ford Dually RV, towing a trailer.
That's awesome.
It was awesome until we got into New York City. You couldn't go through the tunnels if you had propane.
Oh crap. Yeah, because that was after 9/11.
Yeah. And we had no idea how to get to the venue other than the directions that we had, which I believe were printed out from MapQuest. And, you know, it was telling us that we had to take the certain tunnel. Long story short, we did finally make it to the venue, but we were too late to play.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a bummer that we missed the opportunity to play, but I did get to see the venue. We took our picture in front of it, and I saw what is probably the most awful venue restroom in all venue history there.
I bet it had stickers all the way down in the toilet, didn't it?
Yeah, and what's funny is like the toilet was up on like a goddamn pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so bizarre.
I've been on one of those on a Bleed the Sky tour. Like, it was so awkward. There was no door lock, and it was a big room. It's like, I can't remember where it was at. I want to say it was like in Gallup, New Mexico, or something like that, somewhere in that area. But it was a huge room, just a huge room, and then the toilet was in the corner, and there's no dividers, and it's up tall, like a foot up off the ground. And you're just sitting there super vulnerable, and there's no lock for the door. So like, as you're trying to take a shit, you know, there's like 10 people going, "Oh, hey, what's up? Oh, sorry, dude. Oh, what's going on, man?" And you're just like, you know, I mean, what do? You gotta go.
Yeah. That's awful.
It's terrible.
I've been into some interesting situations like that on tour for sure. But going back to your question of favorite venues, there's a few that I really like. One of them is closed down now, unfortunately. It's called the Showcase Theater. It was in Corona, California, legendary venue. And in fact, someone uploaded a video to YouTube earlier this week of the Havoc playing that venue in 2002. So that was really cool to see that come online. That venue was awesome. There's another one in Southern California that I love. It's called the Glass House. It's in Pomona, California.
Mm-hmm.
Great stage, great sound, great backstage area. Just cool vibe. I've always really liked that stage. Even though it's set up in a corner, which is kind of weird, but I don't know, it just works for that venue.
Nice.
And then a couple others that I've played while on tour that I really love. One of them is the Norva in Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
We played there on the Fear Factory tour.
Yep, I remember that one.
Yeah, just really cool room, nice stage. It's high off the ground, good sound, and the backstage is insane.
Right.
Probably the most impressive backstage area I've seen at any venue. And man, I've got to give a shout out to this venue that we played. Funny story. Worcester, Massachusetts.
Okay.
It was the biggest show I've ever played, I think. I mean, there was like 1,600 or almost 2,000 people at that show. Also on the Fear Factory tour. And nobody bothered to tell me that the name of the city was pronounced Worcester, even though it's spelled Worcester. I thought it was Worcester.
Yeah.
And so I said Worcester from the stage probably like 15 times during our set. And then when I learned afterwards that I was calling their beloved city by the wrong name, I felt like a complete dick. But that venue was badass. That show was really exhilarating. I don't remember the name of the venue, unfortunately, but it was rad. So, yeah, that's some of my favorites for sure.
Right on. You know, I'm sure you're probably not the first person to do that. You know,
I know I'm not. I'm not because I've talked with other guys in bands that have done the same fucking thing.
Right. Other than the US, what other countries do you like going to? Have you toured out of country?
Unfortunately, no, I have not. However, that's supposed to be happening early next year for the Havoc.
Okay.
We're supposed to be going to Europe to promote our new record there. I'm hoping that that's going to come together because I've always wanted to tour overseas. It's just never happened. But Europe and Japan are on my bucket list of places to tour.
Oh, yeah. Japan is just awesome, man. My first day in Japan, or not first day, second day in Japan was one of the craziest moments in my life in music. I don't know if I ever told you about it, but
I don't think so.
So long story short, I'll make it as short as possible. So we were on tour. I'll just say who it was, but I was with Fear Factory, and first day in Japan, or actually it was the second day technically, because we slept because we got there late at night, and we had a show the next day in Tokyo, and the band that was opener on the tour with us was Decapitated, and so we do the show. It's great. Japan's just awesome. We literally stayed in a hotel that was in a mall, and you walk through the mall to get to the venue that's in the same building. It was just, wow. It's what, you know what I mean? Like, it's so cool. And like, they had the raddest shoes ever. None of them were my size. Like, I have huge feet, and like all the Japanese people have like real small feet. Nothing good. Japanese people are awesome. Not shaming at all. So it's just the culture. That's who they are. Amazing place. Anyways, I'm getting off subject. We were there, did the show. There was like so much, and you can talk to Dino about this. There was so much sake backstage. Some of us were drinking it, but let's just say Decapitated loved it. And their front of house guy really loved it. And the hotel's literally like almost in the same building, but you could go outside and ride around and go down the block and still just go to the hotel from the outside. So they offered us a van ride, and I'm just like, I'm looking at Bert, and Matt DeBreeze was with us at the time. Matt from Chimera was playing bass, and we're just like, hey man, we're gonna walk, we're gonna check out Japan. So we're walking, and we see this like old school, like redone, like 1940s, like Japanese Yamaha bike. Super cool. And we're just kind of admiring it. Like, wow, that's unusual. We're in a dark alley going down the street to our hotel. Here's this bike just chilling there. Okay. We're supposed to be going to an after party. And so we all go change and everything. We come back downstairs, and the guitarist of Decapitated's like outside sweating his face off, like worried sweat, like looking around like, oh God. And we're just like, what's going on, man? You okay? And he's just like, dude, our freaking front of house guy just lost his mind. Like, he just drank way too much. We're like, well, what do you mean? What happened? And as he's explaining this, you hear like police sirens in the background. And he's all like, so there was like this bike in the alleyway that he decided to hotwire and like take, and he ran it into a $1 million vending machine, like those machines that have like freaking Rolexes in them, and like you could vending like a PlayStation out of, like huge vending machines in Japan. He ran it into one of those and recorrected it to steer off of it, and went through a window of a bank.
Oh my God.
And then as he's saying this, these sirens are getting closer, and we're just like, do what? Oh my God. And then he's just like, yeah, it's crazy. And then he comes up out of nowhere, the front of house guy, and he's like bleeding from his head, like his fucking shirt's soaked. We're like, Bert and I and all of us are like, yeah, we're gonna go to this party. You guys have a good night. Like, we just took off. And dude, the story that the production manager had the very next day was insane. Like, we were all in a van fixing to be taken to a bullet train, and he's like up all night. Long story short, I'm trying to keep it short, but he that bike was owned by another promoter in town.
Oh,
so
shit.
He made a deal with this promoter. It's like a verse promoter, like they hate each other. And I guess the promoter of this owner of this motorcycle had another band, and he wanted to put them on this huge festival that this promoter that's working for us was doing like down the road. And he would drop the charges. And I guess this band is just terrible. And so he went ahead and like bit the bullet just to help decapitated, and he got this ban on the festival. So then they dropped the charges from like the actual bike, but they ended up having to pay for that window, and the window was so expensive in the bank that literally I think it took pretty much all their tour money from like that tour. So basically decapitated played for the rest of the tour for free, but they were taking it out of their front of house guy's pocket. So I guess he was working for them for a while too. So it was crazy, dude. That was my second day, first impression, working in Japan.
Yeah, that sounds like an utter shit show.
It was crazy, dude.
Dude, Decapitated, they do not have good luck with touring. Remember they had that shit that happened here in the States where they got detained for months?
Oh, dude, that is terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. It was that old ordeal with the girl going on the bus kind of thing. Is that what we're talking about?
What a fucking nightmare.
Dude. Wow.
Yeah, basically accusing them of things that they did not do. And then they went to jail, and they were held in jail until the whole thing went to court. And then long story short, they ended up being released because they found out that it was all a lie.
Yep.
But man, dude, you talk about, I mean, how horrible for those guys to be separated from their families and loved ones for months, all because of a lie.
It's crazy, man. Crazy. Yeah. Like, it's terrible, dude. Like the type of things that some of these musicians, especially them, they've had, like you said, they've been through so much stuff, man. Like, and those guys are so awesome. They're such good dudes. Like, that guy just made bad decisions, and it wasn't even anyone in the band. It was their front of house guy that just did all the crazy stuff. I'm like, God, dude, these guys just can't catch a break. It's crazy.
They've got a cool band name though.
Yeah. I mean, they're amazing live. They are amazing. So, do you have a favorite performance you had in your career? Is there like a specific time, like venue thing? Like, I don't know. Do you have a moment that just sticks with you where you're just like, dude, this was amazing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, so I think from like the early days with the Havoc, the one that really comes to mind is again mentioning that same venue that we talked about before, the Glass House.
Okay, yeah.
We played with the Unseen there, and the Unseen are one of these bands that, I had grown up getting into in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was just kind of a unique situation because their guitarist was having issues with his guitar head. And so they ended up borrowing ours. And we had a great show with them. It was really cool. And somehow that led to them thanking us in their liner notes of their next record.
Whoa.
Yeah, which was fucking cool. So that show was a really awesome moment. And then beyond that, like for Spades and Blades, honestly, I'd have to say like every show on the Fear Factory tour.
Wow.
It just, because it felt like a pinnacle moment for the band. We were playing, bigger venues than we had played before, for more people than we had played for before.
Mm-hmm.
And there just was like a lot of camaraderie on that tour amongst all the bands. Most of the bands and the crew. So I just felt like I had the fucking time of my life on that tour, and was like, man, why can't every day be like this?
Right on, man. I appreciate I'm kind of lost for words, dude. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, man. Like, you included me in that too as well. I think my job in general I always kind of liked, I can't remember how I kind of did it with you guys, but I always wanted to come across as like the very first day, like as an asshole, which is really hard for me to do.
Yeah.
You know, but I did that because I'm not that way. I would turn around and just be like, this is going to be the best time ever. You're going to have the greatest time always. Like, you know, and I don't know. That was kind of like my way to break the ice and let people know this was going to be a good show. And like, I personally made a promise to myself that even opener bands, even local bands, like when we were on tour, I would always help everybody and try to help them the best I could, because at the end of the day, those people are going to remember that, and they're going to be like, not only inspired by the show and have a good show themselves, but they're going to think of that moment, and, you know, maybe that'll leave an impression too with whoever I'm working those days. You know what I mean? So like, you know, let's say Spades and Blades comes through sometime. Maybe those local bands and the people that came through that day, they'll see that name. And the next time you guys go to a show there, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I remember this band. It was such a great time. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I feel like I've always wanted to contribute to make it the best I could possibly make it. So that makes me feel genuinely good that you felt that way about that tour. So, you know, I know as a small rock in that big pile, but you know, I tried to do my best. So.
Well, yeah, dude. I mean, there were significant moments on that tour where you went to bat for us, like in New York, when we were playing the Gramercy, and we wanted to have our banner hung, and they were like not having it because they were like, "Oh, it's not flame retardant," yada yada yada. And like, I don't remember exactly what took place, but I know that we ended up having it hung both nights. And then you made it a priority to make sure that our banner was going to be up every night. And, you know, that was fucking cool, man.
Absolutely, man. You know, just at the end of the day, I want to be able to represent not only who I'm working for, but also be a part of that team, because it is a big team at the end of the day. You know, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated, you know, and I think that was a kind of a blessing in disguise for me as well. And I working in the industry I did, but also being the musician. So I was like, you know, if I had a tech and I'm a drummer, what would I want? Who would I want working for me? And in that perspective. And so I don't know. I just kind of threw myself in that way, you know. What would everybody else want? You know, I don't know. I just always wanted people to be in great moods, and I wanted people to be able to perform at their peak level and have a good time. And that was my job, being a stage manager. It's just to get the work in, make it the best I possibly could for everyone, you know. So that's what I liked. That was my guilty pleasure, man. I loved, just like you were talking about the dopamine and the influences and making you feel good. Dude, I would be in such a tunnel vision putting a kit together, and we'd be at like Wacken in front of like 500,000 people in Germany. And I wouldn't even care. Like all I cared about was like, okay, is Mike good? Is this good? Like, you know, and then before I know it, I'm turning around and I see whoever I'm working for, whether it be Devil Driver, Fear Factory, Chimera, whatever, like seeing that crowd out there react to the artist I was working for, and me being a part of building that gun, I guess you could say, and they're wielding that gun out there. Dude, that was probably the best feeling on the planet. Speaking, made me feel so good, you know? So.
Well, I know that you and Max both really made our band feel like we were contributing to that tour in a positive way. In fact, like one of the things that Max said to me on that tour is one of the best compliments I've ever received. and I'll never forget this, but I don't remember exactly where we were at, which venue we were at, but we had been on the road at this point by like 3 weeks or so. And I was side stage and just doing vocal warm-ups and getting ready. And Max said something to the effect of like, dude, like I love seeing like how much effort and energy you put into this. Like, how do you go out there every night and just keep crushing it? Because you are more than warming up the stage for soil work every night.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just kind of caught off guard by that because Max had been exposed to a lot of bands. Um, you know, being Dino's guitar tech, and guitar teching for other bands, of course. You know, he knows what a good band sounds like on stage. Um, and if we're being honest, I just thought we were, you know, out there doing our best, hoping that it was good. um, and I just remember telling him, like, dude, this is not hard for me. This is, you know, what I have worked towards my whole life, are moments like this, to be able to go out on stage in front of an audience that size and show them what we can do. Um, and I just, I felt very humbled by that. And Max was always super cool to all of us. And of course, like we were talking about with you and like, um, all of our interaction with you, and even Wedge, you know, like if anybody came off as a hard ass on that tour, it was Wedge, especially on day one. But as the tour progressed, I even saw him soften up a bit, you know, and say some cool shit. And like, it's like, oh man, this is actually really cool. Like, felt like we were kind of at home in a way, even though we weren't at home.
Right.
I guess it's kind of like at home on the road with our touring family. And, you know, that's those kind of relationships. Like, I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to form those relationships, because everyone from that tour, I am still in contact with in one way or another. And I am never ignored by any of those people. And that just says so much about not only their character, but like the experiences that we shared together on the road. So
100%. Absolutely. And I fully agree with that. You know, it is just, you got to make it that way, you know, I mean, or at least try to make it that way, because you're going to be on the road with everybody, you know, for a long period of time. But not only that, you know, you're going to cross paths. Music industry is a small world. So, you know, treat others the way you want to be treated at the end of the day, you know, because you will cross paths with them one way or another. You're going to, you know, no matter how big or how small of a band or where you're at in the industry, you will cross paths, you know, and it's better to friend the people and know them and treat them and respect them than to not, you know. So that's just
absolutely
how I've always looked at it that way. And you make great friends out of it. Heck, you know, it's like, it's just like you know, like even outside of this, we've gotten to hang out outside of this a few times, you know. So it's cool, dude, to have that friendship and camaraderie and family. So it's awesome, dude.
100%.
Describe like your worst performance and like what did you learn from it?
So I always equate like the success of a performance based on how well my voice is.
Mm-hmm.
And there were certain shows that I can remember from various tours where I was just like, oh my God, that was awful. one of them on the Fear Factory tour was Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I think at that point I was feeling sick, and all of us had gotten sick on that tour. But there was a bug that had been going around. And so my voice was just shot. And even though I had tried to do things to take care of it, like in some ways there's just, sometimes there's just nothing that you can do.
Right.
Your voice is just worn, and the only thing that you can do is give it rest. But it's hard to give it rest when you're on tour and you got to perform every night. But the thing that I have learned about taking care of my voice on the road is that, one, I have to be well rested. Getting that sleep is super important. And then the other thing is limiting my interaction with other people throughout the day before we play, because getting caught up in conversation, it just is more wear on your voice. And I made honey lemon tea my best friend. I would drink that daily. There's also another great tea called Throat Coat.
Okay.
I would drink that pretty regularly. So I just learned to prioritize my voice, so that I could go out there and give the best performance possible. Because for me, like, I don't like trying to scale it back on stage. I want to give the absolute most I can possibly give every night. And I push really hard when I'm screaming, and people, have commented in the past about how, that's just so terrible for your voice, and you're not going to be able to perform the following night. That's bullshit. If you know how to take care of your voice, then you'll be just fine.
Yep.
It just means you have to make other sacrifices in order to prioritize your voice. And other like horrible performances or whatever. I mean,
I think the venue you were talking about was at the Reverb, and that was in Reading, Pennsylvania. I remember
maybe.
right.
Yeah.
There's like actually someone in my chat that's like a big Cleveland Browns fan. I don't know if you're like a football guy, but
No.
yeah, he's like, the only reasons that happened is because Pittsburgh sucks.
We keep talking about Ohio, and actually something really funny happened on that tour in Ohio. There was some guy like mad dogging me, that was like, he was in the front row. He's just mad dogging me during our set and just giving me the finger.
That had to be at the Agora.
Yeah, I was at the Agora. And there was one of those barricades that separated the crowd from the stage, and security would stand, in between the barricade and the stage. And so I just got off the stage this is like the middle of the song. I got off the stage and onto the barricade and got in that guy's face and screamed the vocals of the entire song, the rest of the song, in his face with my middle finger in his face. Just like, come on, dude. Like, you're going to try and shit on me when it's, our turn to get up here and do our thing. Like, fuck you. I'm going to get down here and give you a taste of your own medicine.
Yeah. 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 I bet like that probably changed. Hopefully that changed his perspective in future endeavors and concerts. So
maybe, or maybe he just hated our band even more afterwards, but
yeah. Hey, even bad publicity is good publicity. Yeah.
That and just not taking shit from people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't take that. That's awesome.
I think that's one of like the pitfalls to being in any band that has, you know, even the smallest bit of success or whatever. It's like there's always going to be those people that are shit talkers, naysayers, you know, jealous or think that they can do it better or whatever, and they want to try and drag you down. And you know, I I'm not the type of person that is just going to sit idly by while somebody tries to drag me down. Like, no, man, fuck you. You know, I'm going to let you know that you're being a piece of shit and you're not going to tear me down from what I'm building.
Have you ever gave lessons for music, like on guitar or anything? Have you ever done that?
I've given some guitar lessons in the past for extra money. And it's funny that you asked that. Because my wife, she is like continually making that suggestion to me of like, oh, you should give lessons, and I think you'd be really good at teaching. And I don't know. I feel like I'm a decent guitar player, but I'm not amazing. And there are so many people on YouTube now that are just incredible.
Right.
And you can learn to play pretty much whatever you want just by watching YouTube for free.
That's true, but my argument with that is, what if they have questions? You know, maybe there's something specific. There's nothing like having the human interaction. And I get that, you know, you feel, hey man, there's like me, even as a drummer, you know, I'm like, I think about Austin and Mike and all these guys that are just shredders, you know, and then I'm like, there's just me, you know, I'm decent, you know, could I teach someone? Probably to a certain point, you know what I mean? Right. And those are like the kids or people in general that, you know, who knows, there might be some person my age that's never played a drum kit in their life, and I'd be perfect for that, you know what I mean? So you could probably do something like that, I would think, you know what I mean? But she was suggesting that you should probably start doing some of these things. What do you think about that? Like,
I think that it could be fun, but I am so limited on time as it is that it's just another thing that I don't think would be advantageous for me to take on.
Okay.
You know, maybe if I wasn't pursuing a career in the union as a carpenter and I was trying to do things that, you know, or just around music to make money. But I've learned that I don't do well without having consistency in my life. And that's one big reason why I decided to pursue the career path that I have, because there's consistency in it. And that helps me just stay on track with all of these other areas of my life. So as much as I hope that at some point I could, you know, grow my band into something huge, where I could solely make a living off of that, I also have to be realistic about my circumstances and know that where I'm at in life right now, I've got to do something that is going to be able to pay the bills consistently, because they don't ever stop.
Yep. That's definitely 100% true.
And like the limited time that I do have, I would rather use it to create rather than teach.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, you know, like in your perspective, like the things that you have going on, the projects you got going on. Heck, you're a father. You've got like, there's just so much stuff that you got going on that, you know, you've got to pick and choose your battles. That's for sure. And then there's priorities. And
right.
Yeah, bills don't stop. That's for sure. would there be a specific artist that you would like to pick their brain? If you could pick any brain, talk to them, hang out, have a coffee with them, you know, living or past, you know, who would it be? Who would you pick as that one person?
Man, it's really hard to narrow it down to one person.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's just not fair to have it only one person.
So what about top 5?
Okay, that I can do.
Okay.
Top 5. I think the first person that I would want to sit down and talk with is Michael Jackson.
Okay.
I mean, the guy just lived and breathed not only music, but entertainment and performance from the age of 5 throughout his entire life. And I mean, everyone has seen how magnanimous his life was. And, you know, I find him to be so bizarrely intriguing. I would love to just have 10 minutes to talk with him.
Yeah.
You know, I could spend that 10 minutes just talking about like one song with him. But yeah, that's one. Elvis Presley, of course. Prince, Jim Morrison. Is that already 4?
I think so. So Michael Jackson, Elvis, Prince, Jim Morrison. Then you have one more.
Marilyn Manson.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like some of my biggest influences. But also people that like were or are so obviously beyond the norm.
Yeah.
And are unapologetic about it.
Right. Manson is definitely an interesting one, but very smart in certain aspects too. Like, you know, being in Oklahoma, I don't know if you were here when this happened, but he was on his Antichrist Superstar tour. And it was here in Oklahoma City at our fairgrounds at the TNT building, transportation building. And I think they were on tour with L7. And dude, when that hit, our news got like about, I mean, we live in the Bible Belt. And dude, he knew it. I mean, he knows that.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's going to make a big fuss about it. And guess what? He got super advertised. He had every news channel here in Oklahoma telling everybody Manson's coming here. It's going to be insane, blah, blah, blah. And it was sold out instantly. You know, I remember standing in line going to that show, and there was like a whole entourage of people with bullhorns telling us that we were going to go to hell if we like go into the show. Like, I remember watching like some people actually in there that didn't want to be a part of the show that still bought tickets and went inside, and they're like reading the Bible and all kinds of stuff. Like, not getting into religion or politics or any of that stuff. I'm just saying he was smart. He knew what he's doing. Bryant, which is Manson, Marilyn Manson, he was just smart about that stuff. Like, he was great about, he still is good about like creating chaos and getting people to come out to his shows. Like, it's just, and not only that, you know, I've loved his music. His music was awesome. You know, I dug it. The whole theater, the whole entertainment, everything was just really cool about it. You know, there are aspects that I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know about this, but for the most part, pretty cool, pretty awesome.
I do remember that actually.
Yeah.
I think I was in middle school at the time,
Yeah.
and I was not really a fan of Marilyn Manson at that point. I was
Mhm.
more into I was kind of getting more into just like early punk rock stuff at that time. Um and like Marilyn Manson was too hard edged for me at that time. Although I do remember on that record, um I was very uh I was very pulled in by his music videos, especially um on that album, the song Tourniquet.
Yeah.
Uh, which I actually just listened to that like I think it was last week.
Uh-huh.
Such a good song. I love that song. Um, but that song and then The Beautiful People and of course Sweet Dreams. Like I remember the first time seeing that video and just being like creeped the fuck out,
Right. Yeah.
which I think is a good thing actually. Uh,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I remember when that happened, and that was also at the same time kind of like the height of the whole satanic panic.
Yeah.
And of course, here in Oklahoma, like people were losing their shit over that.
Dude, it was crazy.
Yeah. Um, but man, that guy, like just as an artist, I have so much respect for him and what he's done with his music over the years because he hasn't been afraid to explore different territory. Um, and some shit that he was doing, like even production wise, was kind of ahead of its time. Um, like especially like he's got that record, The Golden Age of Grotesque,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more like synth production and like beats production on that record that was not being done by a lot of other artists at that time. Um, and then like a few years later you start to hear a lot more of the stuff that he used in that record and other artists records.
Right.
But for some reason like I didn't really get into him until later. um I want to say it was like probably closer to 2008, 2009, something like that. um he was one of these artists that I was like, okay, I missed the boat on this because I was too deep into the whole punk rock movement to
Mhm.
pay attention to other shit. And like a lot of people like this artist, there's got to be a reason. So let me go back and see what the fuss is all about. And maybe I'll like it too.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and so the first thing I checked out was like some of his early shit that I had remembered, like Antichrist Superstar, which I thought was okay. There's, some shining moments on it. But actually, the record that stood out the most to me was the record he did after Antichrist Superstar. Um,
So there
but then
was Antichrist Superstar, and then there was Mechanical Animals.
Mechanical Animals, that's it.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after that, he did Hollywood. And that record is awesome because he went back to a darker sound, but he carried over the same type of production that he had on Mechanical Animals. And
Right.
I felt like it really elevated the songs a lot. But yeah, like he basically centered his career around controversy. And I don't think that that was always intentional, but it worked out that way. And of course, he, has become an iconic figure in the rock scene. And even today, like, it's unfortunate that there's all of, this shit happening
Right.
that he's he's been accused of a lot of these. Any way you slice it, what he's been accused of is terrible.
Yeah, you know,
And
I always try to look at it as the perspective as, you know, separate the music from the personal issues kind of thing.
right.
You know,
Well, and you know, I know this is a sensitive topic, so I'm not going to go deep on it.
right?
All I will say is that what he's been accused of, those acts are terrible if they actually happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. And I think that if it ever goes to court, if it ever goes to a jury trial, that'll be the only time that we get to really see and hear actual evidence. I'm saying all of that to reinforce my point that his career has been centered around controversy.
Yeah, always.
Even now.
Always. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
So yeah, he's definitely one of the persons I'd love to sit down and have a cup of coffee with, and like, I don't know, talk about horror movies. Like,
right.
You know, which one is his favorite and why?
Well, it's like the whole thing too. Like, you know, you can take that perspective, and it even can reintroduce the whole fact of, I don't know, there's so many bands that have, you know, kids have hurt themselves or done things, and what they do is they blame the bands for it, and they're just like, you know, it's just crazy. Like, you know, you can say that about video games, you can say that about, like, you know, anything. Like, it's just crazy, dude, how many people don't have a handle on themselves, more or less. Parents have a handle on their own kids, you know, and then they turn to those type of things to like blame somebody for it. Oh, this person looks different, so let's blame them for it. You know, it's like, it's so crazy. It's pretty bad, you know, that it goes to that point.
Yeah, and I mean, rock musicians have always been an easy target.
Yep.
You know, you go back as early as AC/DC being blamed for this this guy that, if I'm remembering this correctly, he murdered someone and he was wearing an AC/DC ball cap, and he blamed it on the song Night Prowler. And, you know, you look at the imagery of the band and album titles like Highway to Hell,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get people that are, you know, looking for someone to blame or something to blame, and they go, ooh, look, the devil.
Right.
You know, and then all of a sudden the band is like being accused of poisoning the minds of children, and their songs are literally encouraging people to murder. And it's like the biggest load of horse shit I've ever heard in my life. Like,
Yeah.
accountability is what you really should be thinking about in these scenarios.
Right.
You know, everyone is responsible for their own actions.
Exactly. Yep.
You know,
100%. Yep.
To blame influence is ridiculous. Because influence does not force anyone to take action.
Right.
You know, you're responsible for your own actions.
100. Yep.
So, you know, and again, going back to like the whole thing with Marilyn Manson and Columbine.
Yeah.
You know, which it's been proven since all of that those kids, the shooters, they weren't even fans of Marilyn Manson.
Right.
You know, again, this was just something where the media was looking for someone and something to blame. And again, here we go. Ooh, it's the devil.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
How the finger pointing comes about when people can't take upon their own actions, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It blows my mind, like literally.
Yeah. I think like a lot of it has to do with people are, I think it's just herd like mentality.
Mm,
People want to belong to a group. And as soon as someone stands out among the group, they want to assess the situation
right.
and okay, is this person a threat or not? Because they don't look or act like we do.
Right. Yeah. And
I've act-
I'm sure you've had a lot of backlash on that too, like especially in the punk rock industry, you know, and I felt that too. I grew up liking, it was more or less the like East Coast hardcore punk. That's what I grew up listening to. Sick of It All, Agnostic Front, 25 to Life. Like those were my big influences like coming out of high school. So like, and I, you know, most people I don't know that are from here or not listening that are from here, and I know you probably would know, but I grew up in Edmond, where
Mhm.
like it's like the really mid class, higher end type of thing, and like, dude, people would just look at me like, "What is this?" You know what I mean? So, but yeah, not to cut you off, but yeah, I'm sure you had your run-ins definitely growing up into that, you know, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking at guys that were older than me that were already deeper into the punk scene than I was, um, as well as looking at bands, looking at the way they dressed, on the album inserts and whatnot, um, and just being intrigued by that, like uh, that phrase, "a wolf in sheep's clothing" keeps coming to mind. Like these guys, they weren't interested in being in sheep's clothing. They just were proud of the fact that they were the wolf. And I've always just felt more drawn to being that rather than being a sheep.
Right.
I know that I'm not like other people, and I don't give a shit that I'm not like them. Um, it's never bothered me that I'm not like other people. Um, I actually take a lot of pride in knowing that I'm not like other people. Um, and so, I'd rather you just call me the wolf rather than me parade around in sheep's clothing pretending to be something that I am not.
Yep. And it all kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier as being faithful to your music and who you are, because people see through it, you know.
Absolutely.
And if you're not who you are, then who are you? You know what I mean? It's just, and I like how you were talking about the sense of pride of being about who you are and not being someone you're not. And I felt that same way. You know, to me, it just lit more of a fire on me, like to be who I want to be rather than to be someone I'm not, you know. So yeah, I feel that big time. What's the best piece of advice another musician has like ever gave you? Is there like a piece of advice someone has given you that you've held on for a long time?
There's a few that come to mind. Um, One of them was this analogy that uh, when you're in a band or you're an artist, uh, it's like being in line to get on like the most badass roller coaster in the amusement park. And, you've got to wait a long time to finally get on the ride. But the most important thing you can do is just stay in line.
Okay.
Because if you leave the line and then later decide that you still want to get on the roller coaster, you've got to go to the back of the line.
Okay. I see where this is going.
So stay in line and it will eventually be your turn. But while you're in line, you're going to learn some things. And what you're learning, you just have to apply it to what you're doing. So, essentially that just boils down to don't give up. Just stay the course and eventually it's going to pay off. But I like that analogy of being in line for the roller coaster.
That's cool. I've never heard anything put that way in a sense. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's badass.
No problem. Another one is it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And basically what that means is like, let's say that, well, I know so-and-so and so-and-so is, in a really well-known band. He's famous and whatever. And I bring that up in conversation with someone. Oh, I know so-and-so from whoever, from whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people know so-and-so. But does he know you? And is he bringing you up or your band up in conversation?
Right.
Just because you know him, that doesn't mean shit. So again, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And having that person know you means that you've got to do things to not only get their attention, but get them talking about you.
Right.
Because, if you're not making an impression, they're not going to talk about you.
Exactly. That's definitely good advice.
And the last bit I'll share is actually advice that was given to me by Dino.
Okay.
He pulled me aside one day on tour to have lunch. And he said, so tell me what Spades and Blades means. What does the band name mean? And so I told him that, our previous band had used a razor blade in our logo. And then later we used a spade in our logo. And we had it on a t-shirt. It said Spades and Blades rock and roll on it. And somebody told us, oh, like that's a cool name. You guys should call your new band Spades and Blades. And he was like, okay, that was a cool story, but what does it mean? What does the name mean?
Right.
And I didn't have an answer for him. And he said, listen, man, people are going to ask you this question. If you're going to be interviewed or whatever, people want to know what your band name is about. If I go and I ask Bjorn from Soilwork what Soilwork means, he's going to have an answer for me.
Right.
If I'm being interviewed by somebody and they ask me what Fear Factory means, I have an answer.
Yep.
You don't have an answer. And he challenged me to think about the name and what it really means. And so I did. And I came back to him a few days later with an answer. And he was like, okay, that's cool. That makes sense. So the point of that is, think about not just your music as an artist, but the statement that you want to make, not just with the lyrics in your music, but your name. Right. What statement are you trying to make with your name? What does it mean? And how does it apply to other people?
Right. Absolutely. Yep. That's a big one, man. And you're right. there are a lot of bands that there's a lot that I've run across that don't think about those things. And then there's some that do, you know, and you know, that was actually going to be leading into one of my other questions. Like before we were going to go, I was going to go over each one of your projects and what they meant before we ended this too, as well. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and talk about the meaning of Spades and Blades, you can, and then, you know, the Havoc as well. And then we can talk about the name Seance, how that came about too, as well. So let's start with Spades and Blades. What ended up being the finalized meaning behind all that?
So, I started thinking about the playing cards. You know, that's obvious because of spades.
Right.
And it made me wonder, well, who are the characters on the face cards? What's the origin of that? Who is the King of Spades? So I started researching that and learned that the King of Spades is actually King David. And David defeated Goliath. And if you look on the playing card, because it is inversed, there are 2 swords, so that's blades.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 4, I believe it's 4, maybe more. There's 4 spades on it.
Okay.
So spades and blades are found on the King of Spades playing card. And David was a tiny guy. And Goliath was, as you know, anyone that's familiar with the story knows that he was a giant.
Right.
No one thought that David would be able to defeat Goliath. He was the underdog. But he beat the odds. And he defeated Goliath. So the name Spades and Blades became influenced by the King of Spades and the story of David and Goliath and beating the odds. That's why the last EP is called Beat the Odds.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That is actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
the songs on that too are very influenced by that whole message. Like if you listen to the lyrics of those songs, it's, you know, so much about empowerment and rising above any of those obstacles in your life, the things or the people that are trying to keep you down. It's, you know, having that belief in yourself and not giving up. You can conquer giants.
Can I tell you the first thing that came to my mind when I first heard your name?
Sure.
So when I first heard of Spades and Blades, I was like, well, spades, what's that? It's a game. And I think about blades, I think about fighting. And so in my mind, I was like, life is a game, and sometimes you got to fight through life for it. And that was literally what stuck with me when I heard of Spades and Blades. You know?
That's cool, man. That's like the power of perception and interpretation, you know?
Yeah.
It can mean something different to different people.
Yeah.
But I think when the artist is able to share the story of what it means, whether people got that from their first impression or not, they'll still be able to mold their impression to what works with the story.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really cool description. The way you broke that down is just awesome. You know?
Thanks.
Yeah. It's very cool. So what about the Havoc? What came about with that? What's the story behind that name?
So it's a lot more simplistic.
Okay.
Keep in mind, we formed this band when we were 19, 20 years old.
Right.
And in the punk scene, especially like, you know, we are classified as a street punk band, which is a little bit more niche in the genre. Um, and like there were all these bands with cool names like The Casualties, The Virus, Defiance, Endless Struggle. You know, these bands that have a very captivating name that just rolls off the tongue pretty easily,
Right.
but sounds badass and like somewhat threatening at the same time.
Right. Right.
And, you know, I think most people associate punk rock with chaos, anarchy, and another word for chaos is havoc. And uh, I just remember wanting to form a band that was going to shake things up and be impossible to avoid. And that meant, like, you know, you've got to have a name that commands attention.
Right.
And so we kicked around a few different names, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation went between Justin and I, but he and I are who decided what the name was going to be. And I think it was something very similar to, you know, what we're talking about right now, just like this idea of like complete chaos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we wanted to have a high level of energy on stage that looked chaotic, but also well executed. And so the word havoc just came into the conversation, and just, you know, the havoc just sounds cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we just thought that it was a good descriptor of what we were hoping to achieve with our music and our aesthetic and our mission.
That's very awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. You know, and when you were talking about the havoc, you know, I just like thinking, you know, associations in that whole realm, what punk rock was about, you know, and I was like, dude, that's really awesome, because I think, you know, people think of anarchy, they think of those type of trends and those things. So, yeah, that's a really good association in that way. It's a really cool name, you know. So what about Séance? What came about with that? What's behind the name on that?
So this one's a little bit longer of a story.
Okay.
So if you don't mind me going a little in depth with it.
Not at all.
Okay, great. So initially I wanted to call this band Sons of the Morning. And morning was going to be spelled Mourning.
Okay.
And it was a play on words because the Bible refers to Satan, Lucifer, as the son of the morning star.
Okay.
And I just thought, like, that's just cool. The son of the morning, like, just sounds rad.
Mm-hmm.
But changing the spelling of morning paints this picture of, well, who is mourning and why?
Okay.
We mourn the loss of someone. We mourn their death. And so it was just a long-winded way of saying we are dead. The whole band is dead. But I decided against that name because shortly thereafter, the show Sons of Anarchy started becoming very popular. And then I started seeing other bands come out with a name that was Sons of something. Like there's a band called Sons of Texas.
Oh, okay.
I think there's another band called Sons of Eli. And you know, I'd seen others too,
so there's like this trend that's just coming about that you're noticing.
Right. And so I decided, okay, I think that I need to pivot and come up with something else that makes more sense and isn't just a part of this trend and is going to get lost in the mix.
Right.
Um, I've always loved one word band names. Um, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, there's no good band names anymore. They're all taken, and you can't come up with a good band name that's just one word." Like that's why we started seeing all these bands that had like, 6 words in their name.
Full sentences.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite bands of all time is Kiss, and it's just one simple word that's so easy to remember. And even though the word is, it could sound very feminine, the band and their image and the way they present the name does not come off as feminine to me. It looks very masculine and over the top.
Yep.
And so with Kiss being a big influence, I was like, I want to come up with a band name that is just one word, but it's got to have meaning behind it. And there's a storyline that follows the main character of this band. So even though I'm the singer for this band, I'm not going by my birth name for this band because it's a character.
Okay.
And in this story, this character is murdered and he enters some form of afterlife. And he doesn't know what this place is. All he knows is that it's black. And so the name of this place in the story is the Black.
Okay.
And in his journey, he ends up meeting these other people that are in the black that wound up there under similar circumstances. And he learns from them that he is still able to communicate with the living through the power of music. And so he and these other guys form this band in the black, and they use music as their medium to communicate with the living. Essentially, they are conducting their own séance from the other side.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to, put all of this in motion for this project. I don't know. I hope that people connect with it. This project is still in its infancy. And the only thing that I have out right now on social media, I did last year around Halloween. And it was just me. Just a couple of cover songs. But I am hoping that by early next year, we'll finally start releasing some originals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all in development right now, but
Cool.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's about getting it done right, not getting it done right now.
I'm going to bring up one of my last questions I like to always ask at the very end of my interviews is, so what question do you wish I would have asked and how would you have answered?
That's a great question. I actually would have liked it if you had asked me more about my family life.
Okay.
Even though this show is, primarily about the entertainment industry, I think that asking your guests about something that has to do with their family life, their personal life,
Mhm.
is cool just to show that side of their humanity to the audience. Um, and my family life is super important to me. Uh, we did touch on it a little bit earlier that I do have a daughter. She just
Mhm.
turned 1 in July, and this new journey of being a father has just really given me an entirely different perspective on life. It's given me an entirely different perspective on my music. Um, and having such a supportive partner, my wife has been very vocal about me pursuing the things that uh, make me happy and unleash that creativity within me. So having that strong family support system is crucial to uh, what I pursue with music and the message that I put in my songs. Um, so yeah, it would have been cool to talk a little bit more about that. But
Okay.
man, I've loved every aspect of this interview, though.
Who's your favorite guitarist of all time?
Angus Young.
Oh, okay. Right on. Angus is, yeah, pretty awesome.
He's electric.
Yeah. That's one band I wished I would have got to go see, I never got to see AC/DC.
Yeah, I saw them at Dodgers Stadium. I went by myself because nobody else that I invited wanted to spend money on a ticket, and I was like, I am not fucking missing this band.
Yeah.
They've been my favorite band since I was like 10.
Yeah.
So I finally got to see them. I think it was 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
I think it was the Black Ice tour.
Okay.
And the their drummer wasn't able to tour with them because he was caught up in some legal drama. So they brought Chris Slade back on drums for that tour. And I actually fucking really love Chris Slade. He played on the Razor's Edge record, and he was on the AC/DC live DVD from Monsters of Rock at Castle Donington.
Yeah, that was an insane video. That is so awesome.
But I just love the energy that he has as a drummer. So I was actually really stoked that I got to see AC/DC with Chris Slade behind the kit.
That's cool.
So yeah, man. Angus Young, just the energy that he has as a guitarist, the way he plays his guitar solos, just the boogie woogie aspect of all of it, the gimmick of the schoolboy thing, like all of it just works. For me, I fucking love it.
Just a maximum performer in all aspects, musician wise, performance wise, like you. Top of the food chain right there. That's for sure.
Well, they're the one band where the lead guitarist is the front man, not the singer.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like there's a reason for that. It's because he's such a explosive performer.
Has his own things. Like there's just literally little subtle moves that he could do and you're like, oh, it's Angus Young. Literally. Yeah, it's absolute phenomenal. I wished I could have seen that lineup. You know what I mean? That's phenomenal.
Yeah. He's the reason why I bought my first SG guitar that I still own and I use to write all of my music on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. What's crazy, what really blew my mind was how many people didn't know where AC/DC's from.
A lot of people think they're from the States.
So when I went to Australia, I actually got to go see Bon Scott's grave. And they had
Awesome.
like a really cool statue of him out in Perth, Australia, which was really awesome. And but his grave is actually I believe he was cremated. And I was there with Dino. We actually went to it, and Dino actually left a Fear Factory pic on Bon Scott's grave. It's pretty cool. So because like he was like, man, he saw all this stuff around it. And he's like, man, I wished I had one of my pics or something around. And I was like, well, got one in my wallet here. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'll like never forget it. Like I saved the day. Yeah, it was cool. That was a
Bon
cool
Scott
experience.
is one of my favorite vocalists of all time.
Yeah.
I wish that I could have seen AC/DC with him.
Yeah, that would have been really, really awesome. Absolutely. Do you have any closing statements? Anything you'd like to add at all, Jason, before we kind of end it?
Sure. Couple things. I also have a podcast that I do every week on the Havoc's Instagram page. It's called Punk Rock Talk. And I get to interview different bands and people in the punk scene that are either promoters or booking agents, record label people. So that's fun to watch if you're a fan of the genre and you want to discover some new bands. Shout out to all of my brothers in the Havoc. I love you guys. We have our new record coming out in January 2023. It's called Our Rebellion Continues. We will be releasing it at 40 Fest, which is taking place in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, January 19th, 20th, 21st. And shout out to all of my brothers in Spades and Blades. John Douglas, I love you. I miss you. And then shout out to my guys in SÉANCE. I'm really excited about this next chapter of my musical career and journey. And I am grateful that I found these guys. They're helping me bring death to life. And just shout out to my beautiful wife and my lovely daughter, my supportive parents. And big shout out also to Gina and Dino Cazares. They have embraced me and made me feel like family from the get-go. I'm eternally grateful to them for that. You know, my music career would not be where it is right now if it weren't for some of the input that they've had in my life. So love you guys, miss you guys all the time. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right on. Well, awesome. And you know, first and foremost, Jason, I want to thank you too for taking your time out of your day. Well, guys, that's the entire interview with Jason Todd. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for your support. Big shout out to Jason Todd for his time on my show as well. If you guys want to know more about Jason Todd, I will have all his socials and links at the bottom in description of this video. Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you want to check these videos out live, head on over to Facebook, hit that follow button and a like, and you guys will get notifications anytime I go live. I typically do these interviews on Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I try to have these videos uploaded as an edit on YouTube pretty much throughout the week. So if you guys want notifications on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification, and you guys will get notifications anytime I do uploads. Again, thank you so much for your support. I love each and every one of you. Have yourselves a super fantastic day.